And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois, on Wednesday, July the 8th, the year of our Lord, 2015. And now stay tuned for Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro from the John DeVita Broadcast Center. From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, July the 8th, the year of our Lord, 2015. And now, here they are, live in person, breathing on their own,
sitting up and taking nourishment.
And one guy with a ring on his finger.
Yes.
Jim and Rich.
And a song in his heart.
I was going to say, I used to work with two single guys. Now we're down to one single guy. And Jim, I was going to say, again, on the air, I know we said congratulations prior to your wedding. Wanted to congratulate you again. But I have to say, Steph Rybant, who people who listen to this show would know because she's been on the show a couple times. She's hosted the remote at Fanny and Schmoes. She had something going. Oh, I know. She was out of town the weekend of your wedding. She was in California with her hubby. And when she got back, she said, oh, Rich, she said, I apologize. I forgot to ask you, how was Jim's wedding? And I said, you know what, Steph? First class, and this is not schmoozing you, Jim. First class all the way. I mean, really, as good a wedding as I've been to. Music was excellent. The food was excellent. Had a really good time, and just want to congratulate you again.
Thank you. You were like one of the family hanging around there.
Yes,
I was like one of the family.
You were like one of the family the way you were,
Yes,
hanging around.
I enjoyed
you were hanging around, enjoying the conversation.
It was, Jen, I have to tell. I might have mentioned this to you at the reception, but I go to the rehearsal dinner, and the gentleman who was the Jim's best man, and also the two other friends that were ushers. Plus, in fact, now the ladies didn't seem familiar. Like they reminded me of people I knew. But when I looked at Gib Moore and I looked at Scott and Steve, I'm like, man, I either have met these guys or I know people who resemble them. They were so familiar, and we got along so naturally. It was just, I was totally comfortable, even though other than when walking into the wedding, probably the only people I really knew was Jim and Dana, and then, a few like yourself, John, just a couple guests. Yeah. But everybody was so good and so friendly. Just had a really good time.
We had a lot of fun. It was a good get together, and actually, it was kind of funny. Our disc jockey Wallace, I think he had a lot of fun.
He did.
He had a lot of fun too. I don't think I never saw anybody laugh so hard at the Best Man's Toast who didn't know anybody else that was involved with it.
Yeah, you know what? I learned some things. I don't claim to know everything about Jim Leon, but we've known each other a long time, and Jim, has mentioned quite a few things over the years. But when Gib made his toast, I learned some things that I had never known. That Jim was eating over at Gibbs' house quite a bit, and crashing on the couch on occasion when things were not going well. And I'm like, holy cripe, Jim!
Yeah, we had a lot. We've had a lot of fun over the years with that, and in fact, Saturdays we're going to have an early celebration of Gibbs' 60th birthday on Saturday. Which is actually his wife's birthday.
Isn't it interesting, though? I'm thinking to myself, just in a general sense, I've been so fortunate in my own life because I haven't met very many. Put it this way: the people that I've run into have all been good people in whatever area of my life you're talking about, and I should not have been surprised that the people who were your friends that I didn't know prior to the wedding would be just easy people to know, and that I would get along with them very well in that short period of time. That shouldn't have been a surprise at all.
No.
So
No. No, we and I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. I'm glad you felt comfortable. It was a fun weekend for us because, my gosh, Sunday we went out. All the cousins got together and we all went out to dinner.
Okay.
And because in one case I hadn't seen one of them in 20 years.
Wow.
I hadn't seen Bob in 20 years.
Man.
And he lives in New York State, and it was just one of those things. We haven't seen each other in 20 years. We've tried to make a habit of it, at least for those of us locally. And there's not too many of us left. Those of us locally, we try to get together at least once a year. Well, it's now become twice a year. We used to get together because there's a bunch of us. Most of us have birthdays between like the end of September and the beginning of December.
Okay.
So we would get together at some point in time in November or sometime, and we'd all go out and celebrate our birthdays.
Mm-hmm.
And now, last year we started this, and we all went to Ravinia in August. And now this year we're going to do it again. We're going to go the end of August to see Santana.
Oh, okay.
And my cousin Christine, who lives out in Washington, D.C., said, next year let me know what the concerts are. Rob and I will come in for it.
Great.
So
Jim, I know that we have a show to do, and I don't want to stay on this subject for
John will let us
long
talk as
time
long as we want.
But the other thing I was going to say, it's not a surprise, say that the ceremony is a nice one, or that the facility is a good one, or that your dinner is a good one. But some of the little things, or I wouldn't, maybe they're not little things, but they're not the major things. I mean, you went to the bar, and it was all top shelf stuff that you had to pick from. You after dinner was served and everybody had danced for a while, more what would you say, hors d'oeuvres?
Yeah, we had some hors d'oeuvres
came out, and that's a touch that I don't remember. I mean, maybe I've been at other weddings where that happened. I just don't remember it. I mean, that was a really nice touch. So those things that are, not as major, but still a nice touch.
We had a very good caterer.
Yeah, very good.
And I will give them a shameless plug here, even though we've already paid the bill and it doesn't get us anything. If anybody's ever looking for a caterer for an event, go talk to the folks at My Chef.
You know what? You're thinking about that. Your photographers were all just blended in, and and I just I kept trying to no, I wasn't really hitting on, but the young lady, or maybe she wasn't that young, that was the photographer, the female photographer. When I first looked at her, I'm not into tattoos on women, and she was, she's tatted up a little bit, but she must have been very attractive because obviously I had a few drinks as well, but when I look closer, I'm like, a couple times I said, "You're really gorgeous," and she was really attractive.
She was very
young
attractive.
lady.
She was a very attractive young lady.
Yeah.
So we'll see how attractive translates to pictures once we get them.
I'm very subtle though. You're
Yes.
gorgeous.
Hey,
let's get right to the point. You're gorgeous.
How you doing, doll?
Hey. So, anyway,
we texted back and forth over the last couple of days about the fact that you were so enamored over soccer and the Female World Cup.
Oh, God.
I just want to know how you could have missed the competition in the Estonian Cup, especially this one game.
The Estonian Cup.
The Estonian Cup. I'm surprised that Jimmy Sunshine didn't tell you to.
Jimmy Sunshine, actually, Jim, just to go back to what you mentioned as you were driving through Atlanta, I'm thinking you didn't run into Jimmy Sunshine because he's been in Atlanta for about the last part of a week.
Oh, no,
greater
no.
part
Well,
of a week.
we've been back
I
for
thought
over a
maybe you
week.
guys touched base since he couldn't come to the wedding.
No.
That you guys got together.
We were up in northern Georgia. We only were in Atlanta to pick up the car and land there, get the car, bring the car back, and take off.
No, actually, I don't know anything about the Estonian Cup, and until you just brought it up, I forgot there was any such thing as Estonia.
Yeah, there you go. Well, there was a game between FC Infonet,
Oh, good.
a first division team, and they played Vrtsu Jalagpalikalubi, which I believe I ordered once in a Polish restaurant. Jalagpalikalubi.
Okay.
That town only has 500 people.
Oh, wow.
You complain about scoring in soccer?
Yeah, of course I do.
FC Internet won that game 36-0.
Wow.
And
Okay.
Trevor Elhe had 10 goals.
Jim, you know what? You're
And if
you know.
anybody is looking for us to do soccer reports in the future,
well, as
that takes care of that.
as
Other than of course, if we ever want to discuss Ridgewood.
as unpleasant as the subject is, though, I when we texted back and forth, I said Hope Solo got the I think they call it the. I say it might be the Golden Glove Award for the
I don't know.
top goalkeeper, and I'm thinking the goalkeeper in the entirety of the World Cup probably faces half the shots in the entire World Cup that a goalkeeper in ice hockey faces in a regular game.
Or in some cases in a period.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, we've seen some instances in a period.
Now, one more soccer thing, though. You remember when I said Carly Lloyd's hat trick was the first recorded in a World Cup event since like about '66.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that? Now, this I did find interesting in soccer because the guy who scored it for England in I believe '66 was a guy named Jeff Hurst. So I looked him up on Wikipedia, and he is Sir Geoffrey Hurst. And I think he was the first English soccer player to be knighted. And it was a pretty cool thing to see that. And I think in his hometown, and then there's a more national. He's part of a couple of statues because he was, I guess, so well thought of, obviously, as a soccer player. That I did find fairly interesting.
Mm-hmm. I got something else that kind of came across that might be fairly interesting, and we may want to talk to this guy down the road. I happened to glance at my Facebook page one day, and I got a friend request from somebody named Jim Leon.
It's from Jim Leon, huh?
Yes.
Oh.
And I thought somebody hacked my account or something like that. Jim Leon is the varsity boys basketball coach at Marymount High School in Cincinnati.
Okay.
And I've exchanged messages with him, and he said he'd love to come on and talk high school basketball in Cincinnati. So I said maybe closer to the season we'll get him on the phone.
Well, I'd love to do that. And, John, I wanted to ask this question. I'm pretty sure knowing John and everything that he can do, your answer probably is going to be yes. But I'm glad you brought that phone part of it up because I don't know, whoever may listen to this show on a regular basis, we are going to have Al Marks today as a guest, former Ridgewood football coach, high school Hall of Fame coach. And we've been having troubles because of various commitments getting Al on. And I was thinking, geez, maybe we could avoid all this if we could get Al on as a guest on the phone. But we could possibly do that. I think Al.
John is nodding.
Yes. Now,
the great Davida can do anything.
Now,
The weapon is right there.
Okay.
Now,
John, you got a phone, a speaker. We could do the whole shtick.
I think that Al, wants to personally be here, but the last time I got off the phone with him, which was only a day or so ago, I thought, hey, we could do this by phone. I would love to hear. Obviously, we know nothing about Cincinnati high school basketball, but I would love to have Jim Leon on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said he'd love to do it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
He said he'd love to do it, and he gave me his phone number, and I said somewhere as we get closer to basketball season, we can talk some high school basketball and find out what's going on in Cincinnati.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All we have to do is call him, or he can call in to us. I have the equipment right here to put it on. All you do is talk into your microphone like you are now, and you'll hear him on the headsets that you got on your head right now.
Perfect. No problem.
No problem.
No
whatsoever.
problem with a long distance call to Cincinnati.
Nope.
Do I got to throw money in the kitty?
Nope.
Okay.
Great.
Because Donna Sports, all his program is all people that call in.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. So, I mean, his whole show is people
So
calling in.
it might be fun to watch, and maybe during the course of the season we'll talk basketball with him, and we can kind of give a shout-out during basketball season to what's going on at Marymount.
Yeah.
Whatever the academy
You know,
was. Mariemount, I believe it was.
You-
Mariemount High School. He's coached high school basketball, he said, for over 30 years.
Oh, you know, Jim, you're making me. I'm thinking of other things, and I'm not going to be able to come up with the gentleman's last name. But I did we mention on the air, or was this just a conversation between us? I had talked to Chris Wilson, who's a
Yes,
former
you did.
Ridgewood. He's a Ridgewood alum.
Yeah.
And Chris is. Been a lot of things in the village here. He was a school board member at District 80.
Yeah.
And just a long-time village resident. Had told me, and I can't remember how this all came about, but that the head varsity boys coach at RB, Tom, can't think of his last name now, is a fan of ours on the Cube. And as you're talking about Jim Leon possibly wanting to be a guest, and we're going to have Al Marks as a guest, I'm thinking, would it be interesting to get high school basketball from the RB varsity boys basketball coach perspective at some point? I bet
think
he would do it.
I think it would be. I bet you he would too. We can set some of this stuff up, and we'll have some fun during basketball season.
Definitely. And you know what? That's not to exclude any of our own coaches, because obviously Chris Mraz or Chris Zach or whoever, Chris Yulee, we're loaded with Chris's as head coaches.
That's right.
Or who's our ladies' head coach? The name's escaping me right now, and I know it won't escape you for
I can't,
reasons we won't go into.
I can't remember it now.
Yeah, there you go. But I bet you have a vivid a picture in your head, though, of our head coach.
I know that long.
Anyway,
black
any
hair.
of those people are obviously welcome to be part of this party as well.
That's right. That's right.
So
all right. So that killed off 15 minutes pretty well.
that was a lot of hot air in 15 minutes already. Oh, hey! Before we get into real Eddie,
oh my gosh!
You know what,
John? We're going long today.
I got my little ditto. I got my little bit about Jeff Hurston, but just before I actually was at Fannie and Schmoes before I came here. Got the chance to read the whole sports section, and then I actually went to the Tribune sports section, which is pretty much like the Sun Times, but there are a few little other tidbits in there. And one of the Klitschko brothers is actually still a heavyweight champ in multiple organizations.
Okay.
And he is, as a heavyweight championship fight coming up against an English gentleman whose name I loved, especially for a boxer, Tyson Fury.
Oh.
Do you like that or what?
Oh, man.
So I wanted to get that on the air before we
Tyson
Tyson
Fury.
Do you
I
like
love
that or
that.
not? Now, I wonder if that's a legitimate name.
I don't know, but even if it isn't, his manager should be
Beautiful.
commended
I
for
love
that.
it.
Tyson
I love it.
Fury.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we survived Stanley Cup. We've gotten over the Brandon Saad trade.
Yeah. Oh, sure. That didn't take long.
That didn't take long. I think the initial shock of it was tempered by the fact that once you came to your senses and look what had to be done.
Yeah. I actually it might ease the burden in some other areas. It was, and you know what, Jim, we talked about this or texted back and forth a little bit about this. And I'm not just saying this would be Stan Bowman's case, but all of these GMs in these sports, because of the restrictions on spending, and maybe hockey more than any of them.
I think hockey and football are your strictest.
They are.
Well,
probably
hockey
your
is the
strictest.
most strict
They are
because
it's a hard.
it's
cap.
a hard cap.
But I'm pretty sure that, you could say it about Stan Bowman, and you could probably say it about the other GMs. They are so familiar with, other players' salaries on other teams, how they possibly are going to work this whole deal with the cap. And I have to say that a 7-player trade, which is what the Brandon Saad deal
Plus
was,
a draft pick.
came
Plus a
together
draft pick.
so quickly.
Yeah.
That I'm sure that they've probably worked so many scenarios that's the reason that a 7-player deal could come together that quick.
They were after the Hawks have apparently long coveted Anisimov, and when the opportunity came, it moved quickly. In fact, it was interesting because listening to the score and listening to that, their hockey guy Jay Sawaski said as the day began, he's starting to call around his sources, wanting to know what's going on with Saad. And everybody's going, oh, it's fine. Everything's fine. Everything is fine. And he called one source, and he said, what's going on with Saad? And he says, prepare for a trade.
Wow, okay.
And that was Monday.
Okay.
That was Monday. He said, prepare for a trade.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Nothing, let's face it. They didn't want to get put into a situation where, you could totally understand what the Hawks are doing there. If he gets the offer sheet, and then, as you say, all we would get is draft choices, that is something that you don't want to lose Saad and get nothing at all for next year in return. So, you know what? You had to pull the trigger on the trade, and the flip side of that too, Jim, is I'm thinking that with Saad coming in at about $6 million a year, that Anisimov probably was a guy they were going to have to lose anyway.
Anisimov was a guy that they probably would have had to lose, maybe not this year, but next year
at some point.
Yeah, that may have had to be next year. By the way, happy 75th birthday to Ringo Starr today.
Ringo.
Doesn't that make you feel old?
They're going to put me in the movie.
And I think the people that came back, the other kid that came back,
Dano.
I couldn't. I was suddenly
Marco Dano.
I
was
wanted to go
as Royal.
I was almost ready to go Rado, Marco Rado for something. I just went blank.
I was thinking of Royal Dano, whose name always is.
Yeah,
was he an actor, or was he a behind-the-scenes guy?
No, he was
on
a
TV?
He was a character. He was a character actor on a lot of shows. But a lot of people, there's some great flexibility because he can play the wing and he can play center. And you may be talking about a third or fourth line center right now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people said maybe not this year, but 2 years down the road, he's going to be a very key piece to the puzzle.
Well, even what little bit I did read about him, even last year, he made. I think he played. I want to say he played like 30-some games,
35 games.
But he made some impact even then.
Yeah.
So, and what did Columbus make the playoffs last year?
No.
So you're talking about the guy who played on a poor team and still had a little bit of an impact as far as his scoring. He had some. Let's say he scored 20 points in 35 games.
He said something like 8 or 9 goals.
Yeah.
12 dozen assists.
Yeah, so he's right around 20 points. And 30. That's not bad.
And that's great.
And that's with a poor team.
And it was interesting that Saad signed a contract with Columbus that was the $6.5 million. Mm-hmm. So there was no hometown discount.
No, not at all.
And I think
his agent screwed up.
I think his agent screwed the whole thing over.
You start to wonder. I appreciate when I hear players in whatever sport say, I'm going to concentrate on what I do, and my agent's going to take care of this. The part I don't like about it, and there's like anything else, there's going to be good, what would you say, honest agents, and there's going to be guys who fudge it a little bit. And I'm thinking, here's an agent, okay, part of that money is going to go in his own pocket. So what does he care about a hometown discount? He has no loyalty to Chicago per se. So you know whatever puts the most money in my pocket, that's what we're going for, and it doesn't matter. And you know what, you could tell your client anything, right? He's not there.
Yeah. From what they said, I mean, if what they said that was, if it was legitimate, that Saad was distraught that
I
they
would
traded
believe that.
him.
I think Saad is a great guy.
I would believe it too.
These goofballs who call in, they start to rip Saad. I mean, come on, guys, give me a break.
You know what?
And even if he did go for the money, you know what? Let's put yourself in this position. First off, people say, they make a lot of money. Sure, they do. The reality is that at any point in any of these sports where there's physicality in every sport, your next move on skates could be your last.
Right.
The other thing is, I think you're presented with an opportunity that most people, especially your age, are not. And I think it's on you to make the money while it's there to be made.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything really wrong with that.
I got to find this. I got to find this post, because when I saw this, on the day of the trade, I just thought it was the ultimate meatball, and it was Grobstein.
Oh wow! Okay.
Well, the salary cap that Beavis Bettman shoved down the fans' throats with the approval of the owners, which caused 3 different lockouts, has caused the Blackhawks to again have to get rid of a very good young player, Saad, and get nothing but a so far a crappy Russian player to replace him. I keep hearing let's trust Stan Bowman with 3 Stanley Cups, and yes, he has done a good job, as could be expected, but let's again remember Dale Talon is the one that built this team originally. Dale Talon was the one, yes, he built the team, but he spent it into oblivion.
I don't think, I don't knock Dale Talon or Stan Bowman. Dale Talon did a good job of building the original Stanley Cup winner, and then, as you say, I think he was a little bit too, how could you put it?
Too aggressive.
Too enamored of his players. Yeah. And he did pay guys a little bit too much, and it caused us to have a problem with the cap.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is, when you have a good team like the Hawks are, the GM, whatever his name is going to bump into salary cap problems.
Yeah. It did take a few days for Les to come to his senses, but he did respond to someone. He says, "I think Saad's agent screwed the whole thing up."
Yeah, I think that's what
he was on.
But even if he didn't, so it's over.
It's over and done with. He got on the first night. He said this is the worst trade since Jeremy Roenick for Alexei Zhamnov.
Well, I don't know. I couldn't. You know what? I'm optimistic because I think the Hawks know what they're looking at.
I think they got some great pieces, and I think it's going to be a fun team to watch.
Well,
now I want to see what they do, if they're going to move Sharp or they're going to move Bickle. Who goes?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I think the big thing is to keep. I think if there's a tricky part of it is to keep Kruger and Oduya. What I'm saying is to keep them patient until that whatever you have to work out is going to work out. Yeah. I really think that both of those guys will stay patient and wait for the whole thing to be worked out.
Okay.
Because Oduya, from what you read, has plenty of offers and hasn't bit. So I think the Hawks have his ear. I think this is where he wants to stay. And Kruger, I do think I don't know all the rules, ins and outs of the hockey rules in regards to free agency. But I think he is a little bit restricted. I don't know if he's totally free the way Oduya is.
I don't think so. I think he's a restricted.
I think he's restricted. So
I think he's a restricted free agent. I don't remember all the details.
Now, when you talk about meatball post and whatnot, I umpired a game at Merrimack Park last night, and the guy who runs the league is a big sports fan. So I get there early. We talk sports. And he happens to be a White Sox fan, and he said that some guy had posted that who cares about what Sale did last night, Chris Sale that is, because it's a made-up record that nobody's ever heard of. And I would say this, in respect, is it a record that has been talked about a lot? No. But it's not a made-up record, what he was going for. I mean, you have the stats there. Martinez and Johnson and Ryan were all part of that group. I don't know where each one stood, but it's a legitimate record. It's not one that you hear a whole lot about.
It's not a common.
But you know what? You wouldn't hear about it if Pedro Martinez or Randy Johnson or Nolan Ryan was going for it because they didn't play on local teams. You are hearing about it because Chris Sale plays for the White Sox.
Yeah. Now, I would, and I texted you last night as we were talking about this. He didn't get the record, but I'm sure he was satisfied with the fact that it was a complete game victory.
Yeah, I think a guy like Sale or any of these professional players, he's not necessarily. I mean, if he gets the record, is he happy? Is he satisfied? Sure. But his goal every time he goes out there is to win a game for his team. That's what he did last night, and I believe he is satisfied.
And that's the way it should be. It's interesting to look at it, and as bad as the White Sox are and have been this year, they're 5.5 games out of the wild card spot.
Yeah, there was
they're 9.5 games behind Kansas City in the Central, but they're 5.5 games out of the wild card.
Bob Nightingale had a column. Where are we at in the week? Tuesday. He had a column at the end of last week in the USA Today about the Sox, and said, it's really for the reasons that you just mentioned, Jim. They could be, and I hate these terms, but I'll use them because everybody uses them. They could be sellers, or actually they could be buyers.
They could be buyers.
And actually, I think they need to be buyers because I don't know that they have anything that anybody wants to sell.
You have contracts. If you were selling, do you think anybody's going to take Melky Cabrera in the first year of a 3-year contract?
No, I don't. You
think anybody's going to take Adam LaRoche in the first year of a 2-year contract?
Those guys are not going to be. The one guy they have that is probably movable is, as usual, would be Samardzija.
Yeah.
And, I think, what do they say? And the Blue Jays are hot after him?
Blue Jays are interested in him. Who else?
Yeah, I'm not. The Blue Jays were the major guys.
I think
the Yankees
so.
have been talking. All the usual teams, probably the Rangers. Anybody who's in the mix for a playoff spot has been talking about Samardzija.
Yeah, and I mean it's when you realize that they're 5.5 games out of a wild card.
Yeah, I mean they're not out of it.
They're not out of it.
And I read the article the other day about they talked about Kenny Williams was quoted and said, hey, we're still confident that this thing can come together. Okay, we got off to a slow start, but we think that the potential for it to still come together is there. And when I read that, I know it's the popular thing right now, the knock the Sox, because they've really underperformed. But I think he's right. I think I every time there's a box score, Jim, I look at the batting averages of the hometown teams, and slowly, Eaton and who else is there? Eaton was one.
Eaton's hitting 247.
But,
right
now. Slowly it's moved up. Who else do they have playing regularly there? I know that Cabrera has slowly inched up.
Cabrera. The thing that was key to me as I was looking at Cabrera, for a while there, I was looking at an average and an on-base percentage that were pretty doggone close to each other.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing 262 average, 302 on-base percentage. His OPS is still pretty lousy at 637.
Yeah, I would say this, though. If you look at Eaton, you look at Cabrera, you look at LaRoche, their averages, not dramatically, but they've sneaked up. Garcia's went down, but I didn't expect him to be a 330 hitter. And Abreu has stayed pretty much consistent, but he hasn't had the power numbers that he had. And John, are you looking at a break now?
Finish your thought.
But I could see where if some of these guys start to do what they are expected to do, that they could have a pretty good run toward the end of the season.
I think so too. Let's take a break and we'll continue.
You are listening to Armchair Experts From the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, July the 8th, the year of our Lord, 2015, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now, here they are, back once again, Jim and Rich.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you there, Doctor of the Dials. We were talking about the White Sox. Mm-hmm. It has been such a puzzlement. It's puzzled me this year when you see what they did in the offseason, and everybody looked and said they won the offseason.
Yeah, they won the offseason. Although, Jim, I think we might have talked about this, but when you really analyze what they did, they added some good names, let's put it that way. But think about this. The three guys that everybody was excited about. Jeff Samardzija, who nobody will ever dispute, has great stuff. No matter who you hear talk about it, this guy's got lights-out stuff. But the reality is, when you look at his record, he's a sub-500 career pitcher. He's never won 10 games in a season.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, Melky Cabrera. I think you have a free swinger that they thought was going to be penciled into the 2 spot, which is not the place for a free swinger. And the third thing is Adam LaRoche put into a spot that, now he's been a first baseman, not a designated hitter.
Right.
So they're asking him to be in a spot where, let's put it this way, anybody who's played the game at, whether it's, league ball, 12-inch, 16-inch softball, the extra hitter has got a unique thing. If you're having a bad day, you can't go out onto the field and chatter with talk with your buddies on the field and maybe make a good play in the field to at least feel you're contributing. You're carrying that bad day with you throughout the day, and I think there's a mental part of it that is unique, and LaRoche has not been in that position. And he's been a really good first baseman his whole career defensively. So the three key guys, yes, are they good players? No doubt. But they all have they're all behind the 8 ball in some different ways.
Right. Robertson's performed well.
He's been fine.
He's been fine. I mean that's been a key
right.
thing.
I forgot about Robertson.
Yeah. I mean,
But those three guys I think, are a little bit miscast in some ways.
Yeah. Samardzija, when you talk about Samardzija's potential, good stuff, the name Floyd Bannister suddenly popped in my head. Mm-hmm. Where this was a guy that they got gave a big contract, and I'm thinking, back then, huge contract. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, well, they gave a big contract to a guy who's a sub-500 pitcher.
Yeah, I mean it's
and has a potential to be wild, and has never really harnessed it. And I don't know if he ever really did. I don't remember.
He had
a
was
good.
an
I
up
know
and down sort of a guy.
83. The winning ugly team.
Yeah,
he was a key part to it.
Sure,
probably won 15, 16 games that year, if I remember right.
When you talk about guys like, Floyd Bannister's an interesting name, Jeff Samardzija, it makes me think, though, what we can't see from the outside looking in is, you might listen to the announcers like the Sox on the radio have Farmer and
Darren Johnson.
And Jackson.
Or Jackson, rather.
And, all of the Sox announcers are ex-players. I think the insight that you get from those types of guys, or like Ron Coomer or Jim Deshaies with the Cubs, because they're ex-players, there's guys whose records aren't sparkling, but the guys on the field still have a lot of respect for them because, this guy can really bring it. He's got great stuff. He's a tough pitcher that just pitches in bad luck, let's say. But those guys, where they can really give you an insight is the respect that, say, maybe a Samardzija or a Bannister, when you look at their records, they're not exceptional, but these guys have respect for those guys because they're on the field, they're competitors, and they respect that immensely.
Yeah. It was interesting yesterday, I heard a term mentioned that I hadn't really thought about. I don't know if I'd ever heard it before, but talking about pitchers, and they talk about how pitchers can set up batters, and get them to bite at things they shouldn't. And they talked about the effective velocity of a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, what are you making a batter do?
Right.
You know, you want him to swing early with what you're throwing him, or you get him to swing late with the pitching sequence. And they talked about this particular guy talked about the fact and how he thought that Samardzija was extremely lucky because he does not use his effective velocity effectively. Maddox talked about one of the best 3-pitch sequences that he said nobody's ever hit it off of him. Change up out over the plate, change up inside. He said, and then a fastball, high and inside.
Okay, so now they're anxious and
They're
they see that.
anxious.
Yeah.
And you know what? You've seen 2 change-ups coming at you. And you know what? Greg Maddox, maybe later on, his fastball was about 92 or 93. But all of a sudden, it looks like it's coming at you at about 97.
Yeah.
And you're not expecting it.
Yeah, well, that's
And
why,
what are you going to do then? You're going to hit it on the fists.
That's why, pitching, I mean, I'm not trying to put myself as an expert, but pitching, it makes sense when you think about it. It's all about changing speeds and in and out, and it's because what do you have? You could have the best stuff in the world, but if you're always throwing it right over the plate, well, you could debate that too.
You
but
can debate that too, yeah.
Yeah, you can debate that as well. I know the other day, Don Cooper in the paper was talking about Chris Sale and Mark Burley, because he obviously coached both of them. And he said, listen, this is the thing that I try to explain to all the pitchers, but they don't all get it. And I am 100% with Don Cooper on this, because when I watch a ball game, which I don't do that often, but what ticks me off is you see these guys fiddling around. That looks like they're trying to hit corners and this and that. And the most effective thing that a pitcher can do is get ahead of a hitter. And the only way you're going to do that is throw strikes. But these guys who are like fooling around and going 3-1 and 2-1, and the guy Chris Sale, a young guy, is getting it. Definitely has gotten it, I would say. Mark Burley, who he was a teammate of for a couple of years, definitely knows what it's all about. Get the ball over, get ahead of the hitter, put it up, because let's face it, the greatest hitter ever is going to get 4 out of 10. He's going to make out 6 out of 10 times. Okay,
Exactly.
And Mariano Rivera, thanks, John. Mariano Rivera.
Thank you, Doctor of the Dials.
Who's probably, arguably, one of the greatest relief pitchers of all time. They said he basically had one pitch, and it wasn't like super, but he always got it over. And I don't know, maybe there was an intimidation factor, because as he got further and further into his career, that aura built up. But he was a one-pitch pitcher who got the ball over the plate. That's what he did. So, and I tell you, as a player, even playing, say, 16-inch, or a guy who we went to school with, Jim, Scotty Gonzalez. I played with Scott as we got older. I think we were playing either Colt or Connie Mack, so we were teenagers. And Scott had one heck of an arm, and occasionally he would pitch, and I would catch, and even though Scott and I were friends, he was the one guy I could think of that I caught that would aggravate me the most, because with that fantastic arm, he couldn't or wouldn't get the ball over the plate. So it was a constant battle.
Was he trying to be cute, trying to be coy, or was it just an issue of control?
I think it was just an issue of control. But that surprised me because here's a guy who could throw a strike from left field to third, second, or home, from a distance. But when he got 60 feet 6 inches, he couldn't find the plate. But, I mean, if he would have been able with his arm to put the ball over the plate, he would have been one heck of a pitcher. So I think it's just key. Trust your stuff and get it over the plate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting today. I see the second game today since it's a doubleheader, a day-night doubleheader at Wrigley Field. We're going to have the battery tonight is for game 2 is going to be Dallas Beeler, and I believe I heard the name Tyler Teagarden.
What, they brought him up?
Yep. That will be the battery.
Who was Ross is out for some reason? Is he on the 7-day? I think he's on the concussion DL.
I think he is on the
concussion.
The 7-day list.
7-day, yeah.
So Tyler Teagarden, I believe, is the.
Jim, let me ask you a question. I'm glad you brought that up because when the heck did the zillion ways that you can be not on the active roster come about? I every day I read the deals. You got the 7-day concussion DL. You have the regular 15-day DL. Then you had the 60-day DL. You've got the bereavement leave. I won't call it DL.
You got
the paternity leave.
Bereavement family medical emergency list.
Yeah.
Let's see. Baltimore, Nolan Reinhold is on paternity leave.
Paternity leave, yeah.
Let's see. Minnesota reinstated outfielder Shane Robinson from the family emergency list.
Yeah. So you got about a half a dozen ways that you can be deactivated, for whatever reason. And it's just interesting. When did I don't know when all this really came about. I know it's been here for a while, but
yeah. And you know what?
It's not a bad thing. I'm not knocking it per se.
It's not a bad thing, and I think the certainly with all the issues from football and hockey, everybody's more concerned now with head injuries.
Yeah.
And they always suspected that Lou Gehrig, and I noticed the other day it was the 76th anniversary. July 4th was the 76th anniversary of his luckiest man on the face of the earth speech.
Oh, okay.
When he was diagnosed with ALS and retired from the game. But a lot of people wondered over the course of his career that he may have had 15 to 20.
Yeah, he got some
concussions,
beanings, right? Yeah.
Beanings and plays at the base.
Yeah, he got plunked. I remember reading, now that you're saying that, I wouldn't have, unless you prompted me, I would have never remembered this. But when I read his Iron Horse, I do remember that, in the minors and the majors, I mean, he got clunked on the head quite a few and that was the days before batting helmets.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good.
So a lot of people wondered if that might have been the led to his health problems down the road. But you know what I mean? They're more conscious of it now, and I understand if you go through the protocol and it looks like there might be a concussion. Okay.
Well, it's interesting, Jim. I'm thinking we were talking pitchers, and this idea of concussions came up a little bit. I was talking to Al Marks the other day when we were trying to determine a time when he could be on the show, and we got talking a little bit, and I sort of equated football players tackling with pitchers pitching, and what I was saying is, you see so many guys in football now going for that big strike, trying to make that big hit, and my experience in football. Reality is you might be able to make a big hit once in a blue moon. You're basically just struggling to get your arms around the guy or get him down any way you can. That's the reality of tackling.
Containment.
And I think where I related it to pitching is today, we were just talking about Samardzija and Floyd Bannister. Samardzija, I think one of the problems that he has probably up here, not his problem so much, but I think he has problems dealing with it, is he's a guy who wants to go deep into the game. He wants to maybe finish that game, and the mindset today is not to do that. But I think one of the problems you have with pitchers not being able to finish what they start is I think years ago the mindset was to complete the game. So if you had to save your arm with a few pitches that weren't your best, you did that so you could have something left to complete the game. Today the philosophy is, it's the all out. Go 6 innings and then we'll come and get you if you got nothing left. And I think the same thing with tackling. These guys are trying to make highlight reel tackles every time, and it doesn't work.
It's the Sports Center mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
And you look at it, and I noticed it one year when Dana and I were up at Michigan State for a football game, when I was watching both teams, and I think it may have been one year we went up. It was Northwestern and Michigan State, and you could tell because Pat Narduzzi was the defensive coordinator then.
Okay,
I looked at him and I said they're not the great. And I looked at Michigan State versus Northwestern on the defensive side, and I mentioned that Northwestern doesn't know how to tackle. Michigan State barely knows how to tackle, but they're a little more fundamentally strong, which was why they happened to win the game.
Yeah.
They happened to win the game. It was a shootout, but Northwestern plays that, wacky offense. But that's the problem, and you look at it and you hit it right onto the point. Everybody's just trying to make that big hit instead of contain and bring them down.
Bring them down.
The
right.
Fundamentals.
Yeah. The
fundamentals that we all,
it's not always going to look pretty, but it's more effective.
Yeah.
The guys today are trying, as you say, the ESPN highlight mentality. They're trying to look good, but they end up, boom, how many times you see a big hit, but they both bounce and the runner is still up and going.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You can't do that.
No. Jim, you know what? What do we do?
Oh, we got time. John, how long can we go? John will go, whatever.
You know what? I'm not in the group of teams that we have, in the professional teams we have in the city. At this point, the Bulls are sort of, in my mind anyway, at a low ebb. Obviously the Cubs and Sox are in season. The Bears are always interesting. The Hawks are super interesting. But the Bulls, I noticed, Cowley wrote an article today in the Sun-Times. The Bulls looks like they're standing pat pretty much.
Pretty much.
He's the last page there. And
okay.
But his point is, it looks like the rest of the division, Cleveland, Milwaukee is another, and forget who else he named, New York maybe, that have signed free agents that should help improve their teams. And I get his point, although it doesn't guarantee just because you add a good player that player is going to fit. But he feels that the other teams have gotten stronger, and the Bulls. He's not knocking the Bulls for standing pat. I think he understands why.
No, and I don't think anybody has knocked them for that.
But I'll tell you what, basketball has got to the point, Jim, where it's totally losing me. I'm not that interested in the Bulls anymore. There's some players on the team I really like, but as a whole, they sort of leave me flat. I'm hoping maybe Hoiberg will make them a little more interesting, and that's no knock on Thibodeau. Thibodeau's a great coach, but basketball in general, for some reason, I don't know if it's the personalities or whatever. It's leaving me cold.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking back to that period of time before Magic and Larry Bird came along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Where it was a down period and you reached the point where your premier event, your NBA championship series, had to be on tape delay at 10:30. That's not going to happen anymore because when you realize what they're going to throw at them for a TV contract.
Yeah, no, it's really popular with people. I mean, I'm saying this is me talking.
And I understand that because I kind of look at it the same way, and I just don't find the appeal of it right now for me personally.
Right.
And you watch the local team, you watch the Bulls. Okay, you kind of keep an eye on the Bulls, but I was listening to somebody yesterday, and they said, is it still, as far as the East, is it still Cleveland, then the Bulls, then the rest of the pack?
Yeah, probably.
And the guy said, well, quite frankly, he said, the Bulls have come back to the pack.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
They've come back. I'll tell you a team I think that's going to be interesting to watch next year. The Bucks.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jim, one of the things that Collie talked about, and I'll say this: it's probably me, and not the sport, but I think the Bucks. I think it was the Bucks added a guy named Greg Monroe. He was with Detroit.
Yeah.
Now the way Collie is talking, that's a nice acquisition for Milwaukee. Should help him be stronger, and I'm thinking, who in the heck is Greg Monroe? Now that's obviously on me because I guess I don't look at the game close enough. But I'm
followed
thinking,
it enough. Yeah.
I mean, that's supposed to make a difference for Milwaukee. Now, the other thing that he mentioned is Jabari Parker will be back.
He'll be healthy.
That resonates a little bit more with me because obviously we all know in this city probably who Jabari Parker is if you're a basketball fan.
Sure.
So that did register with me, but I looked at Greg Monroe. No disrespect to Greg Monroe. He could be a great, maybe if he was with the Bulls, I'd love him. I have no idea what Greg Monroe brings to the table. No. Thank God we're only the armchair experts.
Do you find the college game interesting anymore?
No, and you know what? I think one of the things that really, you're bringing up a point, one of the things that really makes me leery on the pro game, I'm always anxious for the draft, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, hockey. I like to look and see and try to figure, in an intuitive way, who I think might be good or help the teams. I look at the basketball draft this year and I'm thinking, man, if I'm an NBA general manager, you got to be tearing your hair out because the number one pick was Towns, right?
Yeah.
And then you had Russell, and then you had Okafor.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to digress a little bit. Somebody said to me, I think it was Jim, might have been Matthews, that said, geez, I'm surprised that kid dropped the 3. And I said, you know what, Jim and I, meaning you, were watching during the year, and we were texting back and forth. We had both watched a little bit of a Duke game. And I said to Jim, does this kid impress you that much? I mean, not to say he doesn't have talent. He's got talent. But I thought he looked a little slow. I mean, he's a low-post player, no question. But he didn't seem like he was super quick with his moves.
No, he didn't.
And I wasn't surprised to see him drop. I mean, I didn't think he'd drop a lot, but it didn't surprise me that the Lakers took a guy that, was a shooter as opposed to Okafor, the big man. But Karl Anthony Towns, and again, no disrespect to him, he was the top draft choice. That's your top draft choice. And then as you go down the list, the names become less and less recognizable. I'm thinking...
A lot of foreign players.
Whoa, yeah, a lot of foreign players. I'm like...
A lot of foreign players, and...
This one-and-done deal, I don't think, is helping the NBA be a better product. Now, again... There are, based on the TV deal and everything, there are people who are jazzed by the NBA. But I just think you're getting a less qualified player when you take a guy who's only been his experience as a freshman in college. No. I just
they're not ready.
It just
they're not.
I can't see how the league in the long run can prosper when you're basically now taking the college's job, which is to really teach the player at a higher level, and you're doing that job only at the pro level. I mean, it doesn't make. What are we watching here?
Right.
You were watching people develop that should be developed.
You're watching people
already.
that should be developed already, and if they're not developed, what are they doing at the pro level, and why aren't they out? Isn't that the idea of the NBA D League?
Well, you know what, Jim? There's the other thing. Now here's everybody's in it. They all want to win. I mean, that's their business. They're pros. Now you get a young guy, say, like a Marcus Teague, okay, that we had a couple years ago. Comes out as a freshman, okay, he's our first round draft choice. Plays with the Bulls for parts of a couple years. They trade him wherever, I don't know, to whoever. Doesn't make it there. Now he goes to the D League. First off, how does an individual react to that? Some might react to it positively. I would think a lot of them react negatively because you're thinking, man, I just took a big step down. But the point I would like to make is the GMs who drafted these guys, okay, and they had to do it because I guess those are the best players available. But they're there to win. Their jobs are on the line. Now you got this young kid who in the first couple years doesn't do it for you. That guy's gone. Okay, so there is no stability there at all. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're going to keep you till you've actually blossomed and are ready to play. You don't produce, you're out of there. So who is this benefiting? It's not benefiting the fan.
It's not.
It's not benefiting the team. It's not benefiting the player.
No, it's a poor quality product.
Yeah, it is.
And I think we're old time, and we'll go back and talk about the days of Bob Cousy and
But Bob Cousy, when he was, let's put it this way: if you really, it's an interesting person you bring up because Bob Cousy. Prior to getting to the Celtics, and the other interesting thing about Cousy is that when he first came to the Celtics, Auerbach didn't want him,
right?
Because Cousy was actually property of the Chicago, who would have been the Stags.
The Stags.
And when they broke up, Cousy and I can't remember, it might have been somebody like Max Zaslavsky or something, were the options. I don't know who it was that wanted Cousy. I think it might have been Walter Brown because Cousy was a local guy, a Holy Cross guy. Auerbach wanted the other guy.
And he wanted Zaslavsky, who I think went to Philadelphia, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm not sure where Zaslavsky went. Yeah. I mean, who was a good player, too.
Oh, yeah.
But Cousy ends up with the dynastic Celtics, which helped them but helped him as well. But, I mean, it took him a couple years in the league because he might have been in Tri-Cities or something with the Hawks prior to that. I think he might have even been with somebody before he was with the Stags, but I'm not sure. But, I mean, he was not even coming out of college, my point would be he was not a sure thing or what they would have considered a finished product even with 4 years of college. And I'm only using Cousy because you brought him up. You could say that about a lot of guys. So
yeah, actually, now you got me curious. I want to look up Cousy.
Yeah, Cousy, I know you're looking him up right now. So, but I think the interesting thing is sometimes even if you finish 4 years of college, it still takes you a little bit of time to get your feet wet, depending on the guy. Definitely.
Bob Cousy is 86 years old.
Oh, okay.
Nice to see he's still around.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And who did he start out with, Jim?
Played 924 games.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's over 10 years of being in the pros for sure.
Yeah, I got to start getting that.
Now, on the flip side, you got a guy like Moses Malone who never went to high school but came out and he was pretty much ready to play.
Yeah,
even at that point.
Yeah.
So, but I think the odds, Jim, and I'm only saying, jump in with Cousy anytime.
Okay, he was originally a member of the Tri-City Blackhawks.
Right, that's the predecessor to the St. Louis and Atlanta Hawks.
Right, he was drafted by the Tri-City Blackhawks in the first round. He was the fourth pick in the 1950 draft.
Okay.
He was sold by Tri-City to the Chicago Stags.
Mm-hmm.
And in October 5th, 1950, he was drafted by the Boston Celtics from the Chicago Stags in the dispersal draft.
Now, I know that I'm right on this. He never played a game for the Stags. Did he play any games for Tri-Cities?
I can't, on this,
I
can't get it open.
Okay.
I can't. But he ended his career. He was traded by the Boston Celtics to the Cincinnati Royals for, here's a name that I bet you haven't thought about or even knew if he existed, Bill Dinwiddie.
Bill Dinwiddie.
He did not play any games for the Stags or Tri-Cities.
Okay.
He played most of his career with Boston, and he ended up in 1969-70. Actually, 7 years after he played his last game for Boston, he played 7 games for Cincinnati. I think he was a player coach.
There was a story, and I'm not going to be able to get it right. He decided to activate himself.
Yeah.
Because I think he was unhappy with the, let's put it this way, the basketball intelligence of some of his players, who actually included probably one of the smartest players ever, Oscar Robertson. And they were half entertained and half ticked off because in a crucial game, and I can't repeat what the play was to you, it won't come back to me, but Cousy made a really bonehead play. And shortly after that, he decided to retire himself.
Probably
Now
a
you're
good
talking
call.
about he was I believe he was coach with a team. You had Robertson, you had Jack Twyman, who was also a very heady player. I think Adrian Smith might have still been there at the time, who another good heady player. Wayne Embry, who obviously became an NBA exec,
Right.
no dummy. And I think who was the guy who got hurt? He was already gone. The Maurice Stokes, I think, was already gone.
He'd been gone for a number of years.
Jerry Lucas may have been there.
Jerry Lucas, I think, could have been there. We'd have to go back and look at the roster for that year.
Yeah, but I know that the gist of what I'm saying is right. He made a really stupid play, and the players were really ticked. And shortly after that, he retired. So
Went back and sat on the bench and coached. A couple other things, even though I see we're running a little bit over. You getting all excited for next week's All-Star game?
no.
Neither am I.
No, just to say, we were talking about this at coffee this morning, and Vince Accardo was there, and Vince is an outspoken guy. I don't think you've met Vince. But he was saying, yeah, you think, or I don't know if it was Vince or somebody else said, do you think a rookie should be in the All-Star game? And I said,
Yes.
well, of course, definitely.
Yes.
But we were talking about
You think Clayton Kershaw should be on the roster? No. Yes, and he's not.
Well, years ago, Jim, when I still read the Sporting News, when it was still the old Sporting
Right.
News, there was a year in the 70s where the fans voted. I remember Brooks Robinson was one of the players, and a couple other guys who were veteran players toward the end of their careers, and they didn't have good numbers going into the All-Star game. And one of the columnists in the Sporting News, I don't know if it was Bob Bragg maybe, wrote a really interesting column. It was thought-provoking, something I had never thought about. He said, listen, let's not knock the All-Star players or who's selected for the All-Star game. He says, because you have two choices. The game is either who is having the hottest first half, which is fine, and there's a lot of truth to that, or who is an all-star. Now, Brooks Robinson and whoever else was involved in this case were older guys not having good years, but the fans, who the game is really for, considered them stars. Yeah. So that's who they wanted to see. And what is wrong with that?
Nothing.
And the reality is, it's a stupid exhibition game anyway.
And they made it dumber by this.
They did make it real dumb. Selig did, or Selig.
Yeah, they made it dumber by this. It means something now.
Right. And here, you know what really ticked me off? Selig's reaction to it ticks me off, but the media's reaction initially to it ticked me off more. What brought this whole thing about, where the All-Star game plays into the World Series, is that they had the extra inning game one year, and both
Ran
sides,
out of
or one of the
pitchers.
sides, ran out of pitchers. And Selig, very intelligently, said, okay, we've gone 11 innings, 13 innings, whatever it is, game's over. The media went into a frenzy. Well, we got to have an end to the game. Well, wait a minute.
No, you don't.
Everybody on TV, watched on TV, was there in person, saw the All-Stars for not just 9 innings, but 11 or 13 innings, whatever it was. So what's the complaint? Okay, and I'll say this. It's not the first time the game ever ended in a tie.
No,
either.
there was a game back in the 60s.
Yes.
When they were talk about when they were making it dumb when they had two
When they
All-Star.
had 2 All-Star games.
Yeah.
So, you know what? So the whole thing that brought this about to be supposedly a meaningful game. And you know what? And I'll finish on this because I know we're over. But you want to talk about integrity of the game issues? And I mean, we're not talking about that, but I'm bringing it up. How about if you're a player on, like Jeff Samardzija was last year. Now, the good thing they did is they didn't allow this to happen. They didn't allow Samardzija to participate in the National League because he was voted as a National League All-Star. But say you had a guy whose team had a horse in the race, and he has some bearing on this game. What I'm saying is that it opens the door to maybe a little bit of hanky-panky. I know it's a small opening, but if you can favor one side over the other so that, you know what, I'm not going to field this ball because now I'm maybe a likely trade candidate, and I'm a likely trade candidate. The rumors are I'm going to go to the American League or something. I'm not saying this could happen, but it's possible. Now you blow the play, or you strike out, or you serve up a gopher ball to give the other league the advantage, the home field advantage in the series. That's possible. It's not a big possibility, but it's possible that there could be some finagling going on because you've put this stupid meaning where you've got a guy from a last-place team playing in the All-Star game who can possibly determine who's going to be the home team in the World Series. That's what you've got. You've got the guy whose team is 40 games out, who's participating, who could be the difference maker, and who's the home team in the series.
Who could be that? And I was thinking that the only representative from the Red Sox this year is his name just escaped me, but he's played every position this year except pitcher and catcher.
What is Ramirez?
No,
is it Ramirez?
No,
I don't know.
Oh. Anyhow, we'll talk about that.
It doesn't matter. But anyway, I you leave yourself more open, I think, to criticism than you help anything.
You leave yourself open for too much stuff. There's a lot of things we could talk about with the integrity of the game. We're running out of time. The one thing I wanted to talk about, and I keep bringing this along, this game that we love, the Sporting News in 125 years of baseball. There's one thing in there about the 10 top villains in baseball.
Oh, wow.
And one of them is Pete Rose, and with the revelations about that, apparently he bet on his team while he was playing.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we could talk about maybe another time. But we woke up John, so I guess it's time we wrap up.
Yes,
John was napping during that. Don't tell me you weren't, DeVita. You were. I know. I was resting my eyes. I know. I know that old routine. We're going to get out of here. Once again, a lot of fun again today. Thanks to the Doctor of the Dials, John DeVita, for putting up with our nonsense. Thanks to Rich for creating nonsense.
Yes.
And I created some, too. So I guess it wound up being a perfect show again with our tightly scheduled format.
Yes. Yeah, right.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again another time in a couple of weeks. We are out of here. We are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, July the 8th, the year of our Lord 2015, on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita. Our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Seconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, July the 7th, the year 2015. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois, a Ridgewood community radio station. Have a good day, everyone.